Hey, this is a new setup. I don't know if it works as well as the couch back home, but we are in my house at college, so this is the setup I went with because I do not just have a couch lying around here. Before I begin this video, I want to make two quick announcements, I guess. First of all, as you probably know, my last video was my 100 subscriber special, and since then we've gotten over 300 subscribers, which is actually insane. It is hard for me to visualize that many people, so I made a video thanking you guys already, but yes, you guys deserve to be thanked again. But the reason I bring that up is because for my next subscriber special, I don't know exactly what number that'll be. I'm deciding between a couple right now. But I am hoping to pick bigger actual commentary YouTubers have names for their viewers, and I wanted to pick one of those, but I can't think of things. I know some commentary YouTubers do puns off their names, like Chad, who I watch, calls, I think it's the Chadlings, and then Logan Paul, who I avoid like the plague, I think it's Logang. Everything I've ever learned about this man is against my will, but I'm not creative to think of any puns off of my name. I know some other YouTubers just have something else, but I can't think of anything. So please comment down below to give me ideas so I will be ready in time for the next video. I also want to start this video by saying that this video will be a little bit critical of John Mulaney. And I don't want it to be taken as hate. I'm a fan of his stand-up. I have been for a long time. I still am, even after the drama that we're going to be talking about. So if you are a fan of John Mulaney watching, please don't feel like you need to defend him. I don't think he's a bad person. I think that he is probably a great guy. This is just a look at celebrity culture. Please don't get mad at me. Also, general trigger warning for substance abuse, because that was part of the thing that happened. So if you're watching and you're asking, Chloe, who is John Mulaney? Well then I just want to say welcome to Earth. No, he's a pretty big deal. I skimmed over his Wikipedia page, but I don't want to read his whole Wikipedia page. So here are some career aspects that I think might be important here. He really started to gain traction in his comedy career a little after college when he became a writer for Saturday Night Live, and he won a bunch of awards for his writing and for his music. I think he tried to make a show at one point and that never really got off the ground. But where he really found success was his stand-up specials. That's where I personally know him from. I've always been more of a fan of stand-up as opposed to sketch comedy, but that's the TLDR, is he was a writer for Saturday Night Live, and now he's a pretty famous stand-up comedian, like multiple Netflix specials stand-up comedian. I always feel like it's hard for me to say what someone is known for, because I assumed that he was most known for his stand-up, but I have a friend who's really into sketch comedy, and he told me that he mostly knew John Mulaney from Saturday Night Live and had never actually seen his stand-up. So while I'm going to be focusing on his stand-up, that does not necessarily mean that that is what he is most famous for, although if I had to bet money on it, I would say that his stand-up is what makes him very, very famous. But getting all of that out of the way, let's get into the meat of it. What happened? Because as you might have guessed from both the disclaimer and the title of the video, there was a little bit of drama, a little bit of celebrity drama, you know how it happens. Also, I have a thing on my wrist, but that's an Inkbox tattoo. I don't want a bunch of comments being like, you got a tattoo. This is Inkbox. The long and short of it is that John Mulaney was married for a long time, and pretty recently, and by pretty recently I mean like a few years ago at this point, he went to rehab, he divorced his wife, and he started dating Olivia Munn, who is an actress, pretty soon afterwards. I don't want to get myself in legal trouble. I doubt I'm going to get sued over a video that's going to have less than 1,000 views, but I will say that the turnaround between the divorce and the new relationship seemed a little bit short, like suspiciously short, but that's none of my business. What am I forgetting? Oh yeah, he also got Olivia Munn pregnant. They have a child together now. And congratulations. And I don't know if this is the exact timeline, but I do know that he and his wife got divorced roughly around the same time he got sent to rehab. I don't know if it was before or after, but it was around the same time, and then the Olivia Munn thing was like right after. And people were really not happy about the divorce. Like really, really not happy. Like weirdly unhappy. People were so upset to hear about the divorce that not only did John Mulaney lose a lot of popularity, but his ex-wife also gained a lot of popularity, which I feel like you don't see that often in this kind of drama, although I'm not huge into the celebrity gossip scene, so perhaps I'm wrong, but it felt like a very extreme reaction for what kind of just feels like par for the course celebrity drama, right? And I'm not innocent in this. I was also weirdly sad to hear about the divorce. And the question I want to answer in this video is why? Why did I, or anyone else for that matter, care at all who John Mulaney is dating? It doesn't impact his comedy, right? Right? This question will be answered later in the video. As with any internet drama, you always have the armchair psychologists, and for this drama, we had people diagnosing people with parasocial relationships. A parasocial relationship, for those who don't know, is the relationship between a fan and a celebrity, or more specifically, where a fan might perceive themselves to be in some friendship with a celebrity. They might think they know them, they might think they understand them, they might see the celebrity as their friend, whereas obviously the celebrity is not their friend and has no idea who they are. People were quick to say that anyone who is upset about the divorce must have had an unhealthy view of John Mulaney, because obviously if you're sad that he's divorcing his wife, it's probably because you thought you knew him better than that or something. The same way that you're sad when you find out a close friend does something kind of scummy. I think it's more complicated than that. So why were people so invested in this relationship? Well, I think one of the most important things to note is that she wasn't just a stranger. He mentioned her in his stand-up all the time. She was a reoccurring character.
There's new Nazis. I don't care for these new Nazis, and you may quote me on that. These new Nazis.
Oh, Jews are the worst, and Jews ruin everything, and Jews try to take over your life.
It's like, you know what? My wife is Jewish. I know all that. How do you know all that? I'm allowed to make fun of my wife. I asked her, and she said yes. My wife was rubbing my shoulders, which was very nice of her. But then she started singing to herself. Monkey, monkey, monkey man. Monkey, monkey, monkey man. Not at me. Not to be mean. This was a song from deep in her subconscious.
While I was looking for those clips, I Googled John Mulaney wife jokes in hopes of finding a montage so that I did not have to find each of those clips individually. I was unsuccessful. However, I did manage to find this article. John Mulaney's jokes about his Jewish ex-wife don't seem so funny anymore. This article argues that, in hindsight, the jokes about Anne-Marie Tendler seem a little fetishizing at best, often highlighting her Jewishness and especially related to the traditional Jewish woman qualities such as being bossy. As a Jewish woman myself, I don't know if I fully agree. And to be completely clear, the author of this article is also a Jewish woman. And so obviously she is entitled to have an opinion even if it differs from mine. So just because I am saying that I disagree does not mean that I am saying her opinion is wrong. I'm being pretty liberal, no pun intended, with the disclaimers today. It's almost like I've had enough internet drama for one lifetime and I'm trying to avoid it again. Almost. Personally, the jokes don't read as anti-Semitic to me. I can see why someone would think that, but looking over them, it just seems like they aged really, really poorly since he ended up divorcing her. And that's not really his fault because he presumably was not planning to divorce her when he wrote those jokes. However, there are two quotes in this article that I do agree with, and I want to bring them up because I think they're going to be pretty crucial here. Here's the first quote. "You have to understand, this was neither an ordinary celebrity breakup nor a logical step for a newly minted celebrity couple. In every stand-up routine, Mulaney had gushed over his now ex-wife, marveling over her confidence and honesty. And for many of us, these moments were pure gold, a peek into a thoroughly millennial relationship. Interfaith, Mulaney is Catholic and Tendler is Jewish, and childless, Mulaney had always been clear that the two of them did not want children. It seems that John Mulaney and his wife were joyfully, gleefully making a life for themselves based on their own terms. We're going to call this point A. Remember that. Also, a side note, this might not end up being an issue, but I do kind of feel bad for the kid. Nobody's fault, obviously, because stuff happens, but I just cannot imagine going to watch my father's stand-up when I'm old enough to appreciate it and watching him make several jokes about how he does not want children. I know that, like, people change their minds. I just think it would be a little bit awkward. That's all I'm saying. Anyway, point A is pretty simple. By repeatedly bringing up his marriage, he got his audience emotionally attached to it. This does not take a genius to figure out, but we'll come back to this. Quote 2 says, "Many think pieces have come out unpacking why the Mulaney-Tendler-Munn drama hit fans so hard, and almost all of them cite Mulaney's brand of humor as the cause. Mulaney's humor is wholly autobiographical, and so we felt that we knew him because we watched his stand-up. But as several people, including my husband, have pointed out, we really do not know the real John Mulaney. We just know the comedic persona he has crafted. We will call this point B. Again, remember this. If you haven't seen John Mulaney's specials, let me try to paint a picture of the character that he describes himself as. He presents himself almost as an everyman, kind of like a random guy who just so happened to become famous. The persona he gives off is very innocent, normal, almost a little infantilizing. There are a ton of clips of John Mulaney presenting himself as an everyman, and I'll show you some of them later. But for now, take this clip where John Mulaney talks about meeting Mick Jagger, and specifically how he differentiates Mick Jagger, a world-famous celebrity, from John Mulaney, just a regular guy.
Everyone always wants to know if famous people are nice. Like Mick Jagger, he came in to host the show. My friends were all like, is he nice? No! Or maybe he is, for his version of life. Because he has a very different life. He's Mick Jagger. That's his name. He's played to stadiums of 20,000 people cheering for him like he's a god for 50 years. That must change you as a person. If you do that for 50 years, you're never again gonna be like, does anyone have a laptop charger I could borrow? You know that bull way we all have to talk to get through life? Hi, knock, knock, sorry. That's how I walk into rooms. I am 35 years old. I am 6 feet tall. I lower myself. I go, hi, knock, knock. I say knock, knock out loud. Mick Jagger would go like this. He'd go, Diet Coke, and one would appear in his hand. Now, that's not nice, right? The way I was raised, you're supposed to say, may I please have a Diet Coke, please? And then maybe you will get one.
I edited that clip down a little, not trying to take out context, but just because I didn't want to just fully steal a John Mulaney bit. But even so, you can get the point I'm making. And obviously Mick Jagger is more famous than John Mulaney, but the point is that they're both celebrities, and yet John Mulaney talks about himself like he's some schmuck off the street. And like, he's not, and he wasn't at the time that this special was filmed. I don't think this discovery that I made is revolutionary. Famous person puts on persona. Persona falls apart for some reason. Fans get sad. That is not the point I'm making. Please do not attack the wire on my ring light. The thing is that this didn't just feel like a parasocial relationship. I'm sure there are elements of that here, and we'll get back to it, but it did feel a little bit more complicated. Let's take the Harry Potter fandom and J.K. Rowling as an example. J.K. Rowling is, to put it simply, not a good person. She has made many transphobic comments, which has made people a little bit mad at her. However, this has not reduced the popularity of Harry Potter at all. Like, not even a little bit. Instead, she's kind of just been excommunicated from the Harry Potter fandom, which is fascinating. If this was as simple as just a parasocial relationship, you would think that people would react to J.K. Rowling the same way they reacted to John Mulaney, that they would see the books as somehow tainted the same way that some people struggle to watch the old stand-up specials. But I don't think I need to tell you that Harry Potter and its fandom are alive and well. At first I thought it might be a stand-up comedy thing. In order to enjoy Harry Potter, you don't need to see J.K. Rowling or hear her voice, but in order to enjoy stand-up, you do need to see the comedian themselves. It is a pretty personal art form. You can't distance yourself from it in that way. So, in order to test that theory, I wanted to come up with a comparison between John Mulaney and other stand-up comedians instead of authors. And I have found two examples, one for point A and one for point B, and checkers, please stop messing with the ring light. For our two categories, I have picked Bo Burnham and Randy Feltface, and I know that these two seem pretty random, but they are relevant, I promise. Also, with the John Mulaney disclaimer, the reason I picked these two is because I am a fan of them, and that means that I felt more confident writing about them. So even though I will be poking fun at both of them, again, I'm a fan. You don't need to get offended on their behalf. I like them. Let's start with Bo Burnham. Bo Burnham, pretty recently, and again by recently I mean a few years ago, but time is fake, so... Bo Burnham broke off his relationship with his long-term partner. Stop messing with... Bo Burnham broke off his relationship with his long-term partner and started dating Phoebe Bridgers with a pretty tight turnaround. Again, I don't want to throw any stones. I'm just looking at the timeline. This is pretty much exactly what happened with John Mulaney, minus the drug addiction, although nobody was mad at him about the drug addiction. And if you were mad at him about the drug addiction, that seems... Anyway, you'd think, since these situations are virtually identical and both of these men are pretty famous stand-up comedians, that they would have gotten equal amounts of backlash. Obviously, that is not true. And you might say that Bo Burnham isn't as relevant right now because he'd been out of the public eye for a very long time. The fact that Inside exists and was released before he started dating Phoebe Bridgers kind of blows that theory out of the water, in my opinion. I barely heard anyone talking about the fact that Bo Burnham started dating Phoebe Bridgers. And when people did, people were talking about how cool it was that Bo Burnham was dating Phoebe Bridgers. And granted, it is really cool that Bo Burnham is dating Phoebe Bridgers, but nobody was talking about that he also left his long-term partner. For context, every single article I found about the John Mulaney thing was either an article like, how could he do this to his ex-wife? Or like a cold analytical timeline of his relationship with Olivia Munn, devoid of any opinion. There was not a single article I could find that was like, isn't it so cool that John Mulaney and Olivia Munn are dating? They're my favorites. If you can find an article like that, please comment it down below. It would be welcome to read something different than what I have been reading. And like, I did not know who Olivia Munn was before she started dating John Mulaney. She was a famous person, though. I doubt she was as famous as Phoebe Bridgers because I know who Phoebe Bridgers is. But again, just because I know someone and don't know someone else does not mean that Phoebe Bridgers is inherently more famous than Olivia Munn, but I have my suspicions. Still, the difference in reactions between these two situations was stark. So, let's look at Randy Feltface. If you have heard of Randy Feltface, you've probably heard of him from this video that went viral on YouTube some amount of time ago. I'm terrible at telling time. It went viral at some point in history. This video is a very funny set about Randy buying a bookshelf off some platform called Gumtree, it's probably Australian, and the chaos that ensues. Like John Mulaney, most of his humor is autobiographical. He has a very specific brand. So you would think that the authenticity is what's important here, right? Like the article mentioned. Here is how the bookshelf on Gumtree set ended.
You know my favorite bit of that story? I just made it up. Yeah, it's not true. There is no Morgan. It's very unsatisfying, isn't it?
Yes, Randy. Yes, it was disappointing, but not disappointing enough for me to stop listening to that bit because I pretty routinely go back and listen to his stuff, including that one. And even though the fact that it's fake does bum me out a little bit, it doesn't ruin the set. So neither of these things are a perfect fit for our situation. So do I think there's some secret third reason why people got so mad at John Mulaney? I mean, yeah, but calling it a secret reason is a little dramatic considering I heavily alluded to it earlier, and even if I didn't, it's probably pretty obvious. Let's go back to Bo Burnham. As mentioned earlier, the situation between him and John Mulaney are almost identical, with one key difference. Nobody knew who Bo Burnham's partner was. I mean, a few people probably knew, but not the way that people knew about John Mulaney's then wife. As mentioned earlier, John Mulaney had made a bunch of jokes about his wife, so he made her part of his brand. Bo Burnham did not do that. Randy Feltface was also a situation that was very similar, except for, unlike John Mulaney, the Randy Feltface image didn't rely on the Gumtree story being real. John Mulaney crafted so much of his persona around his relationship with his then wife that when that fell apart, other stuff kind of fell with it. Whereas Randy Feltface didn't need that one story to be true to set up the rest of his persona. In fact, based on the kind of nihilistic Buddhist image he presents, it actually fits in really well, even if it is still a little bit disappointing. Let me suspend my disbelief, even if it was an obviously fake story from the beginning. And compare that to J.K. Rowling. Her books are not tainted in the same way that John Mulaney's comedy is because, well, J.K. Rowling blessed us by not writing about any trans characters in her book. Please, please, God, do not let her watch this video lest I give her any ideas. So that's kind of that. There are a bunch of little factors tied in with the parasocial relationship, but that brings me to his newest special, Baby J. Baby J was released after he got out of rehab, and it seemed like a pretty hard reset after everything that happened. I thought the special was very funny, like very, very funny, especially the bit at the end. I don't want to spoil it, but that ending was 10 out of 10. Anyways, it did also feel like a marketing scheme in some ways. He starts the special by talking about how people are mad at him now because he divorced his wife and how Bo Burnham is more popular than him.
You know what I mean? We all quarantined. We all went to rehab and we all got divorced, and now our reputation is different. All the kids like Bo Burnham more because he's currently less problematic. Likeability is a jail.
Which I guess is a fair thing to complain about because all of those things are probably true. But after that, he does not mention the divorce at all. The rest of the special is almost entirely devoted to talking about his drug addiction. And most specials, from most comedians I've seen, have a theme, but Baby J was interesting because I have never, ever seen a stand-up special that is so tied in to its theme before. I can't think of many moments, if any, where he stops talking about his drug addiction. And obviously that's not a bad thing. It's his stand-up special. It was still really funny, and I imagine that that was probably weighing really heavily on his mind at the time of writing it, so no harm, no foul. It still felt like an interesting decision. So why? Why spend the entire special talking about the drug addiction and the rehab and all that and not talk about anything else? Well, honestly, it's really easy to sympathize with. People can be upset at John Mulaney all they want for the stuff that he's done, but, you know, like, it is difficult to listen to the story of a guy who became pretty famous pretty quickly, ended up addicted to substances, and then had to be kind of forced into rehab by his friends. It's hard to listen to those stories and not feel bad for him. It definitely humanizes him, and that is intentional. But it also made me think about the whole parasocial relationship thing. When people talked about the parasocial relationship that audiences had with John Mulaney, it kind of seemed like they were talking about it like it was something that happened to John Mulaney. Like he had innocently talked on stage and people projected their own thoughts and feelings onto him and denied him the right of being a three-dimensional person. And I don't think that's really an accurate assessment. Remember earlier how I said that John Mulaney presented himself as kind of an everyman in his earlier specials? Let me show you some examples of that.
13-year-olds are the meanest people in the world. They terrify me to this day. If I'm on the street on like a Friday at 3 p.m. and I see a group of 8th graders on one side of the street, I will cross to the other side of the street because 8th graders will make fun of you, but in an accurate way. They don't even need to look at you for long. They'll just be like, ha 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 ha, ha 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 ha. Hey, look at that high-waisted man. He got feminine hips. And I'm like, no, that's the thing I'm sensitive about. I have this new phenomenon in my life where like late at night on the street, women will see me as a threat. That is funny, yeah, that is silly. That is silly. And I'm almost at her, and then it dawns on me. Oh, she's running from me. Because in her eyes, I'm an adult. So I wanted to go up to her and be like, hey, whoa, no. I'm not like a, I'm not a man. I'm some stupid punk, you know? I get very nervous all the time, not even about like major life things, just like about in everyday situations. Like, this is my regular speaking voice, but if I'm in a public bathroom and someone knocks too suddenly on the stall door, I go into a whole different speaking voice, which is, hey, someone's in here!
Now, if you look at this and think I'm being unfair and this is simply how John Mulaney sees himself and not a carefully curated image, well, that's probably a fair point, but I will counter by saying, look how he presents himself in Baby J. After everything happened, he kind of knows that the illusion he created shattered, so over the course of Baby J, not only does he spend the time talking about his addiction and recovery, but he also very carefully starts to build a new persona for himself. Here are some other clips from the special.
When I first got to rehab, one of my biggest fears was that everyone was going to recognize me. Gradually, a new fear took over. I'm not like exaggerating to be funny. No one knew who I was, and it was driving me bananas. It was in the newspaper that I was in rehab, and I left it out. Before I realized that no one knew who I was, I went to this welcome group. So like, I went from the detox ward up to the men's ward where I was gonna live for a couple months. When I got there, they had this welcome group. I go in, and I sit down, and I go, hi, I'm John M. And they're all staring at me like, why are you holding for applause?
The clip that was most interesting to me was the one where he talked about being in rehab and kind of expecting people to know who he was. I don't think that's a bad thing. If I were as famous as John Mulaney, I would act the exact same way, and I'm not ashamed of it. I just think it's interesting because it is very different than the timid guy we saw in the clip where he's talking about meeting Mick Jagger. And while you could make the argument that he probably just has started to see himself differently now that he's been in the public eye for a much longer amount of time, I do think it is suspicious how quick the turnaround was between the persona from all of his previous specials and this special in particular. And to be clear, I don't think there is anything wrong with presenting a persona of yourself, even if it is intentionally curated or not entirely accurate to who you are. I make an effort to make this channel family friendly, and that mainly means that I don't curse or talk about topics that I think are too explicit. If you were to meet me in real life and hear me, I don't know, say the F word, you might be taken aback because you've never heard me say that on the channel. And one could make the argument that that would mean you have a parasocial relationship with me and have projected this innocent image onto me. I think that would be unfair. I have also contributed very intentionally to this persona, and I think that it is silly to act shocked when people believe it. So here is the TLDR of the whole video. Do I think that the parasocial relationship between John Mulaney's audience and John Mulaney himself were a primary contributor to the backlash he got in the wake of the drama? Sure. However, I also think it's more complicated than that. Not only were there some other factors that specifically hindered John Mulaney as opposed to other celebrities, even ones in his sphere, he also kind of contributed to that parasocial relationship that ended up coming to bite him in the butt. I don't know. Again, as I said at the beginning, I don't think John Mulaney is a bad guy. I just thought this situation was fascinating and had a lot of thoughts on it. And I've had a lot of fun writing this script and kind of organizing my thoughts on the whole matter. Anyways, if you're still here, this is probably a longer video than usual, so thank you for sticking around, and thank you so much for watching. Bye.